Hey everybody, I'm Claire Hancock and I'm the editor-in-chief of Immersion Travel Magazine. Today is the first day of the Sustainable Travel Summit and our topic today is sustainable travel. What is it? What does it look like? And how do you build an itinerary around a sustainable travel model? In order to answer these questions, we've brought in experts from around the world, including experts from the GSTC, Sustainable Travel International, Asia Ecotourism, and many more. You can ask these experts questions in our chat window, or you can hop on Twitter and ask questions via the hashtag ITMSummit17. Today is sponsored by Urban Adventures, and they're taking over our Instagram account today at Immersion Travel Mag, and they're giving away free tours. Find out more at our website. One more thing I'd like to mention before we continue, our Kickstarter. Immersion Travel Magazine wants to be everything that your travel magazine should be. But we can't do that without member support. So please go to our Kickstarter, sign up to be a member, and thank you for your support. Enjoy! Contrary to popular belief, it can be easy being green sometimes. Making responsible and sustainable travel decisions doesn't need to be hard or very time-consuming. In the next session, Alima Noor Mohammed will discuss methods she has used in her extensive travels for keeping her environmental footprint small. She'll start with a few baby steps that are easier to implement, then suggest ways to continue improving from there. From the depths of the DRC to climbing Mount Kenya to exploring the wonders of Mauritius, Alima Noor Mohammed has realized that her passion is travel and travel writing. She has lived in the United Kingdom, traveled across Europe, explored India, and recently explored much more of her home continent of Africa. She has discovered some of the most joyous and beautiful places on her home continent, including the Masai Mara, Samburu, Amboseli, and many more.
All right. Well, Alima, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm so excited to have you here at the summit. And
Thank you, Claire.
yeah, I'm just so excited to hear about your travels and some of your advice for sustainable travel.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. I would love to start this conversation off with a question about your first travel. I mean, when did you fall in love with travel and where were you?
Okay, I'm not sure about the exact moment. All I remember was the thrill I would get every time I was in a new place. You know, with the people, the surroundings, the language, the smells, the food. And I remember I did my first international trip by myself when I was 16 years old, and I went with the Girl Scouts, the Girl Guides.
Uh-huh.
And I went to represent Kenya in this worldwide scout meeting, and there were scouts from all over the world, and the meeting was in the United States, in Connecticut. And I met scouts from Russia, Nigeria, Japan, like everywhere, all around the world. And I think maybe because of this mix of cultures, you know, everyone coming together, the experience was incredible. And I think that could have been the beginning of my love for travel.
Nice. Wonderful. It sounds like an amazing experience.
It was really good. I mean, at 16, I think it was out of this world.
Yeah, absolutely. Just opened your mind to the possibilities, right? And how big this world
Yes,
is.
exactly.
Awesome. And then what is it about travel that you love the most? What keeps you traveling?
I love exploring the location. So wherever destination I go, you know, either you hop on the bus or, you know, you're taking the sights and the sounds and then the music as you're walking along the street, the band that's playing in the mall that you're visiting, you know, the people that you're talking to, the foreign accents, the food. I think it just depends where I am. There's something always stands out. And because of that and the mix of everything else I just mentioned, it just makes me want to see the rest of the world because it just tells you how big it is.
Wonderful. Same, yeah, I feel like it's always so hard to pick a favorite destination because you know,
Exactly.
every place you go is so special.
It's so unique. Every place, you're right.
Wonderful. So I'm curious, when did you start learning the difference between like typical tourist travel and sustainable travel, responsible travel?
Okay, I learned this when I first started working in the travel industry. This was about 13 years ago, in 2004. We were hosting a large number of guests at a camp for a weekend, And then after they left, the place was a mess.
Oh.
There was, a lot of wastage in terms of garbage, water, food, and it was for me, it was a big negative impact on the environment. So I started to do some research on how to travel with less impact on the environment. And that's when I first came across the term eco-travel. So what I did after that is I joined an eco-friendly company, but eco is a bit used here and there.
Yeah.
And so, from there again, it was more about research and learning and just still growing into that whole, how do we make this a bit more more friendly to the environment. I ended up going abroad. And then when I finally came back to Kenya, I joined a company that actually understood and practiced sustainable travel. So that's when I actually understood the true meaning of the difference between tourism and sustainable travel.
Okay. Excellent. Wow. And you have such a unique perspective as well, because, you travel often from this responsible travel, perspective, but you also have worked in the industry. And so you've seen both sides.
Exactly. So I had the time when I was just a tourist, and now I'm a sustainable tourist. So like you said, I've seen both sides, and it's such a big difference.
Wonderful. And so, yeah, you've worked for sustainable travel companies. What did you experience there that taught you more about the eco travel or sustainable travel industry itself? I mean, where have you seen it grow? What are your insights into the industry?
Well, the experience with the company actually showed me what, the real meaning of sustainability. And how we impact the environment, and it's not just environment like the trees and the environment. It includes the people. So I understood that a tourist could leave either a positive or a negative impact at any destination they go to. So traveling to me just took a whole new different meaning. And it wasn't just about me going out and having a great time and coming back, with awesome memories, amazing photographs. But it was also ensuring that I was going to make a difference. So I was visiting a place, living a minimum carbon footprint, whether it was a destination with a bucket shower, or one which hired locals to manage the place, or even one that just said some of my money is going into conservation. These are the places that gave you that authentic travel experience. And it just made me understand that it was important for me as a traveler not to create friction with the environment and with the locals, because in essence, we are actually visiting their home.
Right.
And over here in Kenya, it's especially true in places like Masai Mara or Amboseli. So this is what I really learned about travel. And yes, I mentioned a bucket shower. It didn't literally mean a bucket, So sustainable travel can actually be amazing. I mean, a bucket shower is literally using just the right amount of water instead of wasting it. I mean, we really don't need to stand under a shower for 20 minutes.
Right.
With these places, you realize you can actually take a shower in a span of 3 minutes. That's what's beautiful about this sustainable travel.
Well, and sometimes, I mean, I don't know about you, but when I'm traveling to these exciting places, I don't really want to spend 20 minutes in the shower. I just want to get in, wash off, and then go.
Go, exactly. Totally agree.
Awesome. So we're kind of getting into the next question, the kind of impact that a traveler can have. And so I'm interested to hear maybe a more specific example of some of the places you've been and how you've really seen your individual impact on that place.
Okay. I think as an individual, I'm trying to see like some place like I'm probably going to pick something local because I travel a lot within the country at the moment. And we went to, for example, there's a place in Diani that we go to. And a lot of, there's always this little card that they put on the table, on the beds or the table, that they say, if you want us to, this is all about our conservation. If you want to use the same towels, let them hang, or if you want new towel. I mean, they always give you the options. These are the beautiful things about these places. But because you have the option of reusing your towel or not letting them change the bed sheets every day, it's kind of like, okay, this is great. So, it's just a matter of leaving the card on the bed or just hanging your towels.
Yeah.
And then one of the things that they do is they you fund one of the there's turtle sanctuaries, for example. So they tell you that on your bill we're going to put an extra X amount of money, which will go into the turtle conservation. and they give you the option to go see how they're looking at the turtles. So there's these little turtle hatchlings just in front of the hotel where the turtles are going to hatch.
Okay.
So that's a quick example I can think of.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what's really important is if some of us are not used to sustainable travel and we don't even know what our actions are actually doing to an environment, it's starting out with baby steps like that. Don't throw your towels away every day. Reuse your towel the most of the time.
Literally, that's what it is. And I think what's important is for people to understand that it starts with, sometimes we ask the question like, well, if, I bet nobody else really does it, or why should I do it? I mean, it's just me who's doing it. But they have to keep in mind that if everybody traveled with, if any individual travelers or any solo traveler traveled, with sustainability in mind, then the impact will be felt as a whole. I mean, that reminds me of what Gandhi also said, right? Be the change you want to see in the world. So an individual traveler's impact on a destination can be historical.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And so, we're talking about kind of starting with baby steps, doing
Yes.
doing some things, and then like some of the more extreme, like maybe taking a bucket shower, that could be horrifying for
Exactly.
some viewers.
Well, I'm gonna tell you a secret over here. It was hard. Like my husband, I had to teach him all this. And when we went for our first bucket shower, we went to it was a place called Loisapa where you even literally sleep under the stars. And the bucket shower experience, he was like, I think I could do this again. So it's just even, you can enjoy it. It's still luxurious in its own way, but it's authentic. That's what sustainable travel does for me. It's just because you get to the core, because you're so interactive with the people where you are, because you're caring for, everything around you. It's so authentic.
Absolutely, yeah. You get that real experience, and instead of being separated from the
Exactly.
authenticity, as you said. Yeah.
Yes.
I love it. Let's see. So when you are looking for a hotel to stay or a lodge or a camp, what are some things that you look for in that accommodation that lets you know that it is sustainable?
Well, the first thing I do actually is look for a story. So I look for the story because when you've practiced sustainable travel, you have a story. You want to kind of tell the world. So I look for their story and their link with the environment, with the people. Is it the locals who are working there? Is it a local manager? What kind of food are they serving? Is there some kind of cultural mix in the environment? What kind of souvenirs? Literally, what kind of souvenirs can I walk away with? Is it a branded T-shirt, or is it something that was made locally by the women, in the village, for example? I look for the interaction of the destination with the environment, and that's kind of how I figure out that okay, this is a place I could try out. Do a lot of research, and the experience you get traveling sustainably versus a regular tourist is incomparable.
Nice. I really like that you brought up the gift shop
Yes.
because with some traveling that I've done, I've found gift shops in hotels or accommodations that were wonderful. I mean, yeah, local people, that actually come in and sell their goods once a week.
Yes.
And then, they leave some of the goods behind so you can buy throughout, your time
Exactly.
there. But then also maybe doing some research on any endangered species or like products made from species, and then knowing how to find those when you're traveling, so not to buy those things, or to know if that gift shop is selling
And
something that.
one of the examples, for example, a typical example would be, I mean, now, ivory is completely banned, but that would be an example that, if they're selling ivory, that that's actually, it's sin.
Yeah.
It's come from an elephant that was killed, and it's, so exactly, like you said, just knowing what kind of gifts you're buying as well.
Absolutely. Great. Yeah, I mean, so just we're putting a list together of things to be aware of, and so when you do travel, when you are looking up these places, things to absolutely be aware of with gifts and with souvenirs, but also with their environmental impact. Are they using, their resources minimally? Are they,
Exactly.
building up the architecture so that it looks like local architecture instead of having like this big boxy thing out in the middle of the Masai Mara?
Of the Masai Mara, exactly. Exactly.
Nice. Awesome. So kind of the same question when it comes to tours. When you start booking tours and activities, what are some things that you look for that lets you know that it's on the right track?
Well, obviously, you start your research online. I look at TripAdvisor and I read a lot of the reviews because you almost always have reviews on sustainability about a destination. If there's a destination that does practice sustainable tourism, travelers actually put it up. So that's a great way to do your research. If you know people who've been to these places, you talk to them, you get their thoughts. And then I feel like a lot of sustainable travel destinations actually bring in the cultural and authentic factor into their programs. So it's not just about doing, going on a game drives and then coming back. For example, again, I'm picking the example of the Masai Mara. But a lot of these will take you to like a village to kind of go see, give you a bit of the history of the village. You have a guide who's from a village that's, one of the bomas in the Mara. And he's leading you, he's teaching you. So the fact that there's somebody like that who's doing your tour and who you're going into their village to look for it kind of brings you closer to what sustainable travel is. I mean, it brings the cultural factor to it, it brings the authentic factor to it. A setup in a conservancy, for example.
Yeah.
So that again tells you, okay, if these guys are set up in a conservancy, there must have been a set of rules about how to handle the conservancy. I mean, conservancies are all about conservation, right? So, it should be. I think we're doing pretty okay on this side, though. And a lot of awards. There's a lot of like world-renowned awards that are being given out for sustainable travel. So if companies have that, it already kind of puts you to the right track to do a lot more research on the specific companies. So, and when you talk to the tour companies, ask them questions. Feel free to ask them all sorts of questions about what they do, and you'll know immediately how much they're involved in conservation and how much they're not, because they probably won't be able to answer you if they're not.
Right. Yeah. I mean, are there questions that you always ask guides that you just, know it off the top of your head that you want to ask?
I think for me now, I know what to look out for because this is how we travel. I go online, I do my research. There's not one specific one. Maybe in the beginning, but also the fact that I've worked in the industry, I kind of know what to look out for.
Right, exactly. And a lot of viewers, are maybe coming into this for the first time. And so,
Exactly.
Not exactly sure, what questions to ask, but, they might also get kind of a hinky feeling sometimes, like, I'm not sure
Exactly.
if this guy really knows.
And they should follow their gut, follow that hinky feeling.
All right, good advice. Follow your gut always. Nice. So I'm curious, where do you have plans for your next trip? Where are you headed to next?
I'm looking to go out to the Far East, so Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, so as far east as I can go.
Nice.
Bring me. So
Nice.
it's going to be a full circle eventually, but yeah, that's kind of the next thing on my bucket list.
Cool. Have you started research yet? Have you started looking at places you want to stay or things you want to do?
Not yet. I'm actually we're still trying to settle into this house. I haven't had
Yeah.
time to to do the research, but I'm looking forward to that because that's also the best part of planning your trip is now reading up and seeing, okay, where can we go and where can we go and look for authentic food, and
Yes.
so that's what it is. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, if you make it to Chiang Mai in Thailand,
Yes.
you'll have to stop by the Elephant Nature Park.
Okay.
Because
Perfect.
they,
I'll keep that in mind.
yeah, the gal who started that, her name is Lek, and
Okay.
she has an amazing program where she rescues elephants that were maybe hurt in the tourism industry somehow, giving elephant rides that were too heavy for them. And so they're rescued, and then they have this amazing place that they can, roam around in. They have their own
Yes.
mahout, or, someone who takes care
Oh,
of
how
them
nice.
all day, every day. I mean, these mahouts
Oh,
almost
wow.
sleep with them at night. So, like their own personal buddy.
Yes,
And,
yes. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's a really neat experience. So,
Okay. Obviously,
I would
you've been,
highly-
right?
Yes, I would highly recommend it. I
Okay.
spent a couple days over there, and it was if I ever go back, I'm going to spend a couple weeks volunteering. Just,
Oh, wow.
I mean, you mostly like cut up fruits and vegetables and help out around the place, but it's such a wonderful, calming place to be. It's a
Very
nice,
nice.
nice experience.
Definitely, it sounds more fun than just kind of sitting in one of these big resorts.
Exactly. um, yeah, and I guess I would also be curious. You've told us bits and pieces about some of your travels and your trips that you've taken. Um,
Yes.
I I would wonder if you could step us through just one of those and kind of give us a full picture of what that one experience was like. Maybe when you were like hot air ballooning across the Masai Mara, or
Oh, yeah, that was incredible. Um, yeah, it was one of the mornings, it was a very early start. I think that was probably the most difficult part of that day. They came to pick us up from the camp. It was 4 o'clock in the morning. We'd had to drive about 45 minutes to an hour to the ballooning site. And once you're there, everybody's just, there's groups of people, and you get into your balloon upside down. So the balloon's on the floor, and you're actually being told this is how you're supposed to get in, and your head is on the floor, and you're like, seriously?
uh,
But then once it lifts off the air, you're just like, oh my God, this is incredible. And from up there, you're looking at literally you're looking at the planet, Earth down below you, and you're just like, this is it. Like this, we can't let anything destroy this. You have a full view from up there,
wow.
and it's so peaceful. It's so quiet, and the sun is rising at the same time. I hope you've done it, because if you haven't, I'm sure you will now.
It's yes, it's on my list for sure.
Okay, good. And it's one of the most incredible experiences ever. And when you come down again, the locals are there, they're welcoming you. They're doing a little, their own traditional dance for you, and they're just kind of taking you in with them. And you have, lovely breakfast set out, and it's just beautiful just out being, in the Mara at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Wow. That just sounds amazing. Thank you so much for
It
sharing that.
was no problem.
Excellent. Well, thank you for spending the time today, and I'm just so excited to be sharing this with everyone at the summit. And I'm sure if viewers have more questions, they'll be sending those in. And
Super.
yeah, I'm
Great.
thank you so much. This was
Thank
wonderful.
you for letting me be a part of this. I'm so excited.
Excellent. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, I'm Claire Hancock and I'm the editor-in-chief of Immersion Travel Magazine. Today is the first day of the Sustainable Travel Summit, and our topic today is sustainable travel. What is it? What does it look like? And how do you build an itinerary around a sustainable travel model? In order to answer these questions, we've brought in experts from around the world, including experts from the GSTC, Sustainable Travel International, Asia Ecotourism, and many more. You can ask these experts questions in our chat window, or you can hop on Twitter and ask questions via the hashtag ITMSummit17. Today is sponsored by Urban Adventures, and they're taking over our Instagram account today at Immersion Travel Mag, and they're giving away free tours. Find out more at our website. One more thing I'd like to mention before we continue, our Kickstarter. Immersion Travel Magazine wants to be everything that your travel magazine should be. But we can't do that without member support. So please go to our Kickstarter, sign up to be a member, and thank you for your support. Enjoy! We're getting up close with wildlife in this next session. Watching animals in the wild is one of the most memorable experiences that one person can have. When done responsibly, wildlife travel can benefit local habitats, endangered species, nearby communities, and travelers. We're going to learn how to encounter wildlife in the most responsible way with Janine Duffy from Echidna Walkabout Tours. Janine Duffy is one of Australia's best wildlife guides. She's a world award-winning tour operator, koala researcher, and educator. She started the nonprofit Koala Clancy Foundation in 2015 with a mission to inspire travelers and local communities to help ensure a future for wild koalas. She advises on wild koala tree planting and research projects.
Janine, it is so wonderful to have you here. And Echidna Walkabout Tours and Koala Clancy Foundation, we're going to be learning all about this today, and also learning about wildlife travel and how to do that the best way possible. And so I'm just so excited to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much, Claire, for inviting me. It's great.
Wonderful, wonderful. Oh, well, let's jump right in. I am curious, when it comes to wildlife tours, interacting with the wildlife, what are some ways that we can have the most positive impact on these places that we travel to?
Well, I think firstly, go to somewhere where the animals are wild. If you travel to a place where animals are living in the wild, you're supporting the communities that have protected their wildlife in the wild. So they get benefit from that, and it makes them more inclined to protect their forests and their waterways and their ecosystems. So I mean, I'm not saying don't go to any captive experiences, but if you can make the majority of your travel to animals that are living in the wild, and do that responsibly, that makes an enormous difference to the animals, just in that single step.
Wonderful, thank you. That's a great start, and it makes me think of on Thursday earlier today we played a new documentary called The 2.5%, the Osa Peninsula. And so they're kind of talking about locals over there and how they're starting to get into sustainable travel, and they're starting to do these wonderful tours through wild areas. And what was really cool is that you have a lot of locals who see this wildlife every day, and it's nothing new to them. They see it all the time. And so when they're leading a traveler through there, and the traveler's like, oh my goodness, look at that over there, and that is so cool, and what kind of flower is this? And it makes it so much more special for the guide, because they can see it from a whole new perspective.
Oh yeah, and when people are starting to get jobs from doing that, they then learn more. They then, pass on that benefit to their own families and their friends. And we're seeing it happen in our local community around Little River in the Yuyangs, just west of Melbourne. People are talking about wildlife. They're talking about tourism. They're talking about, opportunities to have good jobs and protect their wildlife, which is what they fundamentally want to do. But up until, this point, they just haven't seen any connection between jobs and wildlife. And so as soon as you create that connection, you've got a wonderful grassroots movement that you've created.
Oh, so exciting. So
Yeah.
exciting. Wonderful. And so, yeah, nature tours are really growing in popularity. I mean, everywhere we've seen, people wanting to see nature in its wild habitats. And so what are some elements to look for in a tour to know that they are doing it responsibly, that animals are being supported, and that, conservation is happening?
This is a really hard one. Claire did a desktop survey because we're working on a conservation project Australia-wide amongst tour operators at the moment.
Okay.
And what I found is that there was no single common factor between all of these really good conservation-minded travel operators. Except they were all locally owned. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, wow.
So I went through their websites and checked, what is, publicly available about every single one of these companies. And many of them had a conservation page or a sustainability kind of page on their website. Some of them didn't. And yet I know that they have a really deep and profound conservation ethic, but it's maybe just not the way they handle their own website.
Okay.
Some of them had memberships to organisations that you immediately think of, like the International Ecotourism Society and things like that. Some of them don't. I think every company approaches things differently and has a different method of getting to the place they're going. But there's no single factor except that they are all locally owned. And I think that there's something to draw from this, is that if you're supporting a locally owned business, no matter what they do, their money is staying local. They have a more profound, I think, reason for doing the right thing by their local environment, by their local community. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, they have more investment.
Exactly.
in
It doesn't
keeping that wildlife wild.
guarantee. It doesn't guarantee that they're doing things the way you want, but maybe that's a starting point, and then maybe you look at their website, maybe you look at the photos of how they interact with wildlife, and you think, yeah, this looks like the sort of thing I want to do, or no, I don't like the look of that. Maybe you look at their TripAdvisor reviews, all of those sort of things, and see what people say. But it's a really tough one. There's no single answer.
Yeah. Wow. That is very interesting, and it goes to show that if you want a really meaningful experience, if you want a good experience, you do have to do some research. You do have to go in, and you can always email them or reach out to them and ask questions. I've always found that sometimes it's hard at first to get out of that bubble sometimes and ask questions, but they're always usually happy to answer.
Oh, and look, if they're not, go somewhere else,
Yeah.
I would think.
That may be a good red flag warning.
Yes, exactly.
Excellent. Well, thank you. So I guess tell us more about your tour company, Echidna Walkabout Tours.
We're a social enterprise. So for those who don't know what that means, in Australia it means a business that has a mission and that invests more than 50% of its profits into that mission. So you can be a for-profit business, which we are, or you can be a not-for-profit. It doesn't matter either way, but you're doing it for a purpose rather than for making money for the shareholders,
Okay.
So our mission it's a big one, is to ensure the free living future of Australian wildlife and to use tourism as a way of creating economic value for wildlife. And so, we've kept it nice and broad because we deal with lots of different types of wildlife. We're particularly known for koalas. We do some koala research. We've been doing that for 19 years now. But we also work with eastern grey kangaroos, with wombats, with wallabies. It's, we see, amazing wildlife all over Australia.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, man, I can't wait to get out there.
It blows our mind. I mean, we're sort of, it's a small industry in Australia, wildlife tourism, but it's so exciting. When you're at the sort of pointy end of something, you're breaking new ground kind of thing. It's really, really fun. You can almost try anything that your heart desires and see whether it works.
Yeah.
It's great fun.
Ooh, very exciting. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to talk to the idea of all your tours have what's called conservation actions. Could you explain a little bit more about what that is and what it means for travelers?
Yeah, I think when we first started wanting to do something active with our clients for the environment, we had this idea that volunteerism was something that you had to be knee-deep in mud. It had to be dirty, it had to be painful, it had to be 3 weeks long, you know what I mean? And that doesn't work for the majority of tourists,
right,
who are coming to a place to enjoy it. It does work for some, but not the majority. And we could see that there was some benefit in doing a program like that, maybe once or twice a year. But then again, if we could combine a small conservation action into every single one of our tours, we would have 8,000 people a year doing this conservation action.
Yeah. Wow.
And potentially that's better than 1 week of, of long-term serious hard work. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little bit of progress every day is better than one chunk every couple months, or however often you could get that special volunteer.
That's exactly right. So we had a project in mind that we thought might suit, and there's a weed, an invasive plant growing in the You Yangs, which we had realised was very bad for the koalas. Basically, when the weed completely surrounds the koala's tree, the koala stops using that tree. We don't know why, but we think it's a physical barrier for them. They don't feel comfortable, walking through it. So we thought, and by the way, parks, the National Park Service prefer that you remove it by hand because there is an endangered orchid that lives in the same areas, and machine removal can damage the orchid's environment. So we decided that we'd incorporate removing one weed per person into every single one of our tours that visited the You Yang, so 8,000 people a year.
Yeah.
We made it optional. We ran a 6-month trial just because we weren't sure if it would work. And Claire, within 1 week, we did not need to run a trial because everyone loved it.
Wow.
It was, oh my gosh, it was completely life-changing to watch people embrace this idea. Oh, so we get at that stage, most of our travellers didn't even know they were going to be doing this because it was such a new concept. They booked with a travel agent, say, in the United States, and probably 6 months before, so there was no time to let them know. And they were going out there wearing their nice clothes, and amongst all the other wonderful things they were doing, they were being asked to pull out a weed, and some of them did not want to stop.
Oh.
we've had families who are determined to clear the entire Yuyangs of the weed in one day, which is not possible.
Yeah, it's a big endeavor.
But what we found, and we've been doing it now for 5 years, what we found is that it switches on elements of people's brain, I think. Some people learn through doing things. Some people learn through seeing. Some people learn through hearing. And by giving everyone an action that was different, a lot of people who maybe, hadn't connected at that point suddenly went, oh, yes, this is me. That they found that there was a place in the tour that they could fit, There was something they could be proud of that they did. And it's changed our whole attitude to what we do. And Claire, I could go on and on and on to some of the theories that we've come up with as to why this works. But I think a small action that is slightly difficult, it doesn't work as well, I don't think, if it's too easy or if it's too much fun. It needs to feel like you're sacrificing a little bit of your time for the good of X. So in our case, for the good of the koala.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I could understand that, where you sacrifice a little bit of your time, some sweat, some energy, but that feels good. It does always feel good to do something like that for another being, or plant life even, to see something beautiful grow. That's so satisfying.
Look, it is. Immediately when we started this, our customer satisfaction levels went up. They were already high, but they went up through the roof. And we've hardly ever had a single person refuse to do it. Now, it's optional. We don't force anyone to do it. But, we deal with a lot of people.
Yeah, wow.
And to have that kind of broad appeal, it just makes me think there's potential in the tourism industry that's not being tapped yet. Every company should be doing something like this, even if they only do it for the promotional, benefits out of it. It's even if they only do it to feel inspired by humanity again.
Yes.
It's a wonderful thing. It changed my view of our travellers entirely.
Wow, that is very inspiring.
Yeah, and we won a big international award for it too, the Responsible Travel Award, the Best for Wildlife Conservation.
Congratulations. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the Koala Clancy Foundation. You mentioned you've worked with many different animal species and conserving and helping endangered species, but Koala Clancy seems to be maybe one of the larger foundations that you work with. So could you tell us a little bit more about how Koala Clancy came to become a foundation and just kind of the history behind it?
Okay, yeah, Koala Clancy is a real koala. He lives out there in the Yuyangs in the wild, and he started being active on Facebook in 2014. And he's got a lot of friends. So he's really quick typing because he's got 2 thumbs on each hand. So yeah, you should see him go.
Nice.
But we started the Koala Clancy Foundation in late 2015 because we could see, as a result of this weeding program that we started on our tours, we could see that there was so much more potential for this. And we wanted to reach out to the local people living around the area where Koala Clancy lives. And we wanted them to feel really invested with what was happening with the koalas there in the Yuyangs. because we really do firmly believe that no one individual can save a species or even a local area. That working as a team, and we're a big team, we're 20 people here at Echidna Walkabout. Some of our best ideas come from team members, when we're sitting talking about things. So if we expand that team to include the whole local community, we could really get some amazing things done. So Koala Clancy Foundation is fully supported by Echidna Walkabout. We do get other donations for Koala Clancy Foundation, but at the moment the major donor is the tour company. And we plant trees in June to August, and we've started already this year because we had such excellent rain. And our hope is to fill the river valleys with the native trees again, because out on the Western Plains of Melbourne, a lot of the original koala habitat was in river valleys, and there was grassland outside of the river area. So the best koala habitat was alongside the rivers, and a lot of those trees have been lost, just due to old farming practices. And change of conditions and things like that over the years. So many of the farmers and landowners are really keen to have the native trees planted in their stream sides. And it's not hard to get trees. There's plenty of government programs that offer trees, but the single thing lacking was the hands, the people to do this. And so we take out volunteers mostly from the city, mostly from Melbourne, urban people. We take them out on Sundays and get them to plant trees. They love it because a lot of city people need connection with nature now. We meet families whose kids have never seen a kangaroo in the wild in Australia.
What?
It's un-Australian.
Yeah. I didn't know that was possible.
I know, and so for $20, which doesn't really even cover the cost of running this, but it's a way of getting them to contribute a little bit. We can take out anyone of any demographic in anywhere around Melbourne or Geelong or the local urban centres, and we can get them doing something good for wildlife. And it's been so inspiring, Claire. We've made friends out of it. We've got regulars who come every second week. It's just, it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. And so one day when I'm gone, there'll be people looking after those koalas out there, I hope.
Wow. That is so inspiring. I love hearing that. Wow. So kind of talking about koalas, and there's been some question from viewers and from some other people that koalas are really cute. We want to keep them around, but some people are asking, what role do they play in keeping the ecosystem healthy and thriving? I was wondering if you could help us answer that.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I see koalas as being like the canary in the mine. So koalas need a very healthy natural environment to live. And the sort of things that can cause koalas to decline are very minor changes in the management of the forest. So koalas are an indicator species, I believe. If your forest is not in good condition, you'll find the koalas are declining. And if they did nothing else, koalas would be very useful for that. So we walk out into the You Yangs forest after researching there for nearly 20 years, and we can see really noticeable changes in the health of the forest. It's not doing very well. Climate change is affecting the gum tree woodlands of Australia very, very seriously. But because trees are long-lived and have very, very deep roots, in the case of, our big eucalypts, they're slow to show the impact of things like climate change. And only forest experts or people who've been travelling in that area and noticing it for a long time, they're the only ones who see it. Everyone else who comes into the forest thinks, oh, it's beautiful,
Right.
There's leaves, there's trees, there's all the things you could want. And so I see koalas as being the ones that tell us when the forest is in trouble. And unfortunately, koalas are telling us that almost everywhere. We need to act.
Yeah. Wow.
There's a few species that rely on koalas. There's a very cute little thing that we've noticed. There's 2 bird species that use koala fur to line their nests.
Oh.
And you can imagine how warm and snuggly and beautiful a little nest would be if it's lined with lovely thick koala fur.
Yeah, those are lucky chicks.
I know. So one of them's called a black-chinned honeyeater, and it's a very beautiful little bird, black, white and green, but they're in decline. And I wonder if that's related to the koalas being in decline.
Oh, maybe.
And the other one is the brown-headed honeyeater, and he's a very vocal, very active little fella. They're so funny. They're tiny. They're smaller than a koala's hand.
Oh, wow.
And they'll perch on a koala's back and pluck fur like crazy. And sometimes the koala hates it, and sometimes they quite like it.
Like a good back scratch, maybe.
Exactly. It's a little massage.
Huh. Okay, so hopefully the more that people can get involved and help protect the forests and take care of them in the ways that, like you said, pulling weeds, planting trees, hopefully reducing environmental impact in other ways. Maybe there is a way to kind of turn the tide and keep these koalas and their other wildlife friends from declining. Hopefully. So apart from conservation actions, what are some other ways that travelers can help save koalas and preserve natural habitats, either while they're traveling or maybe even when they get back home? What are some ideas?
Oh, when they get back home, that's a good idea too. I would say the best thing people can do for animals in Australia, for wildlife in Australia, is to come over and stay in one place for longer. I think there's a tendency with Australia for people to think of it as a once-in-a-lifetime journey. It's a destination that you can go to once. You can tick off the highlights, Sydney, Melbourne, Rock, Reef kind of thing, and then you go home and you've done it. And nearly everyone who I meet who's doing that says, I wish I'd stayed longer. I wish I'd done fewer things and stayed longer and enjoyed them more. And I will come back. And so I think take the pressure off yourself. Don't do, 4 destinations in 12 days. It's not good for the planet to do that. It takes a lot of infrastructure. It takes a lot of, carbon emissions for you to move around an enormous continent in that short a time. Yeah. It's hard. And it also means what you tend to do is the big popular stuff, the stuff that you've heard of, the stuff that has, the enormous multinational company running it, which has enormous marketing dollars. It's not always the best stuff. I would say it's usually not the best stuff.
Yeah.
Really?
I feel like sometimes when you do those things, like you get to put yourself in a postcard that you've always seen, but then you don't have a new story to tell when you go home. And sometimes it is good to see those bigger things, and there's ways to see them that are less impactful. But at the same time, why? Yeah, exactly. Why not stay longer and have an experience that no one else, in your circle of friends can probably tell. You go home and you tell these amazing stories, and that's what it's really all about, is coming home and sharing that experience.
Yes, exactly. And have something to share, I think probably this works for most destinations around the world. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, I would agree. And I'm a huge fan of slow travel. I know some people don't always have, a full week even. They have a few days and they just want to be able to spend those days, seeing one place and that's fine. But I've always been a fan of, if you only have one day to spend, then walk. Start early in the morning and don't take that bus tour, just walk everywhere. And, go down some of the side streets and stay off that main beaten track, because you're going to find some things that are special. And you're going to, see some real culture, and you're going to see some real wildlife. And I feel like no matter where you are, slowing down gives you that special experience that people don't normally have.
It does. And it doesn't matter how long you've got to spend. If you've got 7 days, stay in one place rather than doing two. Anything, I think, that leads you to do something in one day, just do it in two instead. I think everything you do, just add on a couple of days to every single thing you do. It's very rare that you get to a place that you think, oh, gosh, this is boring. I have to leave as soon as possible.
Yeah,
very rare that happens.
Exactly. I've never been in a place where I ran out of things to do.
Oh, no. Oh, neither me. I mean, if you run out of things to do, you might not be looking hard enough.
Right. Wow. Yeah, that's great advice.
And the benefit you're doing in doing that is quite enormous. I really believe one of the best things tour operators can do is offer 2-day tours where everyone else offers a 1-day tour to the same thing. Because the minute you stay overnight in a place, you are just about quadrupling the benefit to the local community of doing that. Now, you're staying in a local place that's often locally owned. You're buying food from the local environment, from the local community. And so 1-day tours are really tough on the environment, I think. Try and do 2 and 3 days. You'll get to know your guide better. You'll see so much more. We do a 3-day Great Ocean Road tour where a lot of companies do a 1-day tour of the same thing. And we almost always see echidnas on that trip.
Oh, cool.
No matter what time of year. Because you've got 3 days to do it in, you might not see them on the first day.
Right. Wow.
But you will see them.
Yeah, I mean, that is really rare. Because I really haven't talked to many people who have been to Australia and been on these tours, and they haven't seen an echidna or, some of those animals that, we hear so much about, and they didn't get to see it. And that's probably why they didn't really spend enough time in that area.
Yeah, that's right. Because if you're doing half-day or 1-day tours, you're out at the wrong time of day anyway. You don't have the chance to do the morning and the evening.
Right.
So stay.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, middle of the day is hard for wildlife wherever you go.
Yeah.
So 1-day tours are tough for wildlife. Stay longer. It'll be worth it.
Exactly. I always felt noon was time for a good lunch and a nap. Instead of out trying to find wildlife, because that's what they're doing. They're sleeping and enjoying probably that warmth.
Exactly right.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much for sharing about Echidna Walkabout Tours and about Koala Clancy Foundation. Do you have anything else that you would like to share with viewers before we move on?
So if there's one thing I would suggest for tour operators out there, people in the tourism industry already, if you want to implement a conservation program, an action in your tours, keep it simple. I think a lot of us make the mistake of overreaching and trying to do too much. If you start with something small, something practical, something that you can manage, you're more inclined to follow it through. And then, as you see it working, you can add to it later. So that's my biggest advice. I think that was the thing that made the key to our success with this action.
Wonderful. Very helpful. Thank you. Thank you again. This was wonderful.